Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Enter the Minds of Nadine and Vera podcast. We're so happy to have you with us today. Today is going to be a little bit more of a hard podcast. We're going to talk about grief. Um, grief. But first, we're going to talk about our snow day we had here in Tallahassee yesterday. Yesterday, on Tuesday evening, we got about a couple of inches of snow, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It covered the ground pretty well.
It started yesterday around 5 p.m. Um, 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. I woke up Kayla and had her come outside, and it was still snowing, but it was about to stop snowing. So we got to take some pictures and play around in the snow a little bit.
So that's why this morning when I went out on the porch, I saw footprints. So I had to come back inside and investigate. Hey, did you walk on the snow? Otherwise, someone else must have been at our door.
I love that my kids, even though they're adults, they still love that it's a snow day and just love being out in the snow and taking pictures. The last time it snowed in Tallahassee was like 7 years ago, maybe, and it lasted for about 30 minutes. Um, Floridians, we get so excited when it snows because it doesn't happen often. And even when we lived in Louisiana, the kids saw it a handful of times, but every single time it's exciting until it's not.
Yeah, but this time it snowed from Texas to Louisiana, Florida, Georgia. It was awesome. Um, I've seen plenty of snow, but it just amazed me how much snow that we got in this southern area.
That is so true. Okay, so our main topic today is grief. So last podcast we had my natural father Charles Gunners on. This podcast we're going to be talking a lot about um, my dad Terry McCollum Sr. and also my mom's dad and my godmother and just whatever other grief we want to talk about. But yes, my dad, Daddy-O, passed away 3.5 years ago. Well, it'll be 4 years this September, at the age of 62. And that was one of the hardest times of my life when he passed away. That's when I knew grief is seriously real. It's a physical component. It's an emotional component. It takes over your life. You feel lost. I feel lost without my dad because he was a special man.
And you were there. Tell them about your experience.
I don't want to go in it in too much detail because to me it still haunts my thoughts in my mind. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning still thinking about him being in the ICU. Um, but the last 6 months, or maybe the last 4 months of his life, I was doing travel nursing, and I lived with him in Fayetteville, North Carolina, with him and Jackie and Grandpa, and just seeing him every day for those last 4 months before he passed. It was truly a blessing. Um, my dad had some health issues. He got COVID January earlier that year, and
Yeah,
I
but
feel
he
like
beat that.
he beat COVID. He was in a hospital for about a week with that and just was really, really sick. But I feel like he just did not bounce back from having COVID and had some other medical issues that I won't say right out here, but he was a sick man. And but just seeing him every day, I just realized, it's your parents are such a blessing. It's like you just want to crave, you want to hear their voice, you want to hear those stories that they have. I just remember when he used to come home and say, "Ton." Yes, that was my nickname for my dad. Only he can call me that, but
One of many.
yes. But yeah, so I was there when he passed away. He went in the hospital on a Friday, had to call the ambulance. Mind you, this man, who's the hardest working man that I've ever known, my mom was also one of the hardest working women that I've ever known as well. My parents, they worked hard, which is, anyway, another story for another time. You know where I was going, right?
Yes.
um,
She's ready to retire.
no, but that Friday he was still working. He worked in he was a contractor. He was the boss. and he wasn't feeling good on that Friday. And I said, Dad, we need to go to the doctor. And he was like, well, I have a business meeting that I need to go to, and I could not get him to leave and go to the doctor. So he literally worked on that Friday until about lunchtime, and then I said, okay, I'm calling an ambulance, whether you want me to or not. Like he was, just was not feeling himself. He started having a hard time breathing, and he was like, okay, Latanya, go upstairs, get my bag ready. And he was telling me what he wanted to bring to the hospital. And as I'm coming down the stairs, I heard him call his sister, my Aunt Mary. And what you don't know about Terry Leon McCullum Sr. was he was a very private man. He was the type of person that he did not want to put his health issues on us, his children. I want to start to say that I'm the oldest. He has 6 kids, 3 girls and 3 boys. My brother next to me is Terry Leon McCullum Jr., brother Malcolm, Michael, Michelle,
Natasha.
and Natasha. So he had 6 kids, and but he did not want to put his health issues on us. And so a lot of the times when he was in the hospital, he would call after the fact to let us know that he just got out, which drove me crazy. He was the type of person that says that when I die, you won't know until after the fact. So that way, he didn't want us to cry over him. He didn't want us to worry or shed tears. But how can you not when you have such a great role model in your life? But anyway, went in on a Friday, and this is still like during COVID time, so they have visiting hours. You only can visit from like 5 to 7 every night. So the next, maybe I'm lying, maybe it was 10 to, anyway, had visiting hours. And so went on a Friday. I stayed home for some reason. Not for some reason. Jackie and Grandpa was out of town with a funeral of their own, seeing their family in Oklahoma, and so it was just me and Dad at home and Nugget, his dog. So Saturday I went to visit him, and he was like, "You don't have to come back tomorrow," because he knew I had to go to work the next night, Sunday night. And I said, "Oh, I'll be here." Sunday I came, and he loved football, and so I put the football game on. And when he wasn't really watching TV, like he was having some anxiety due to him having a hard time breathing. He was on oxygen, and the nurse said, well, I'm going to give him something for anxiety. Does he have anxiety? And I said, no, he does not. And I said, if he's having some anxiety, it's due to because he's having a hard time breathing. I visit him. He was tired. I leave. For some reason, when I'm leaving, I'm not going to cry, but some reason when I left his room, well, I prayed over him before I left. We prayed together. And then when I left to give him some time to rest, as soon as I left the room, I bust out crying, like just tears overwhelmed me. And why was I crying? Because I've never seen my dad well, he was a strong man in that moment because it's hard to be sick, but just I've never seen him sick like that in my life. I've never seen him so vulnerable. Anyway, so I leave, and then sadly, that night he passed away. I get a call a couple hours later saying that they had to transfer him to an ICU. So I rushed back up there, and I was able to hold his hand, hold his feet while they resuscitated him. It was hard because I'm the oldest. I always try to be the strong one and try to, be there for my siblings as much as I can. I need to do better. I need to do more. But I'm sitting there calling up everybody in the family, my siblings, my mom,
And we
Jackie,
were talking to him over the phone,
my
even
aunts.
though he was unresponsive. Yeah.
Everybody was able to say they loved him and goodbye. And it was hard just being that person that go between everybody. People said that I was lucky to be there, and I feel like I was, but it also was very tragic. I'm a nurse, but even a nurse shouldn't have to be there with your father dying.
Yeah.
and they resuscitated him more than once. And, it was just letting him know that we were there and that we loved him. Be strong. He, hindsight, just looking back, when I was saying I'm rambling, but when he called his sister, he never did that beforehand. So talking to my aunt, I feel like he knew something was really wrong.
Well, he called me the day before, and we talked about each and every one of you, his children. That man loved you guys with his all, and he went from one child to the next. So
he loved his
he loved his kids so much, and the reason why so much pain for all of you is because of the love that you shared with your dad. And even though we had been divorced for many years, we became the best of friends. And, we talked about his health and his children, mostly his children. And I can truly say that to lose him was a great loss. And I remember that what I said to him when you let me talk to him, when you had the phone to him, I was like, okay, Terry, come on. You've done this before, because he had been that sick and come back several times. When we were married and living in Hawaii, they had the heart monitor things hooked up to him, and they called me from work, and I rushed there, and as I get there, they taking him off, and the doctor say, we don't know what happened, but he went from a failing heart to being fine. And so years later, maybe a couple of years later, we're at church at Ebenezer in Hattiesburg. That's his hometown, and that was his home church. He was speaking.
Ephesus, right?
Was it Ephesus? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And anyway, he was speaking, and that's when I heard the true story, because he never even shared it with me. He said he was lying on the table, and he was talking to the Lord and asked him, is it my time? And he told him no. And next thing you know, he was getting up from the table. Well, over the years, he has called me when he was in ICU, or had his wife at the time call me to let me know what was going on with him. He has really been a fighter. So this time I'm like, okay, Terry, come on back. I'm waiting on you to just get up. But he didn't. And that was a sad day for us all.
Okay, well, first, let's go back and talk about some good things. Let's talk a little bit about him and his life.
Okay. Like you say, he loved gospel music. You're talking about old school. We had one of those reel-to-reel type recording where you could just record music for 2 days. And he had every gospel album you could think of. Andre Crouch was like one of his favorite. I can't even name the many artists that he loved. And he loved music, like his daughter said. He loved music. And what I remember that was fun in hindsight was he would go away on a trip for 2 or 3 months. So, I'm the wife. I'm excited. My husband is home. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pick him up from the airport. We get home. And what did he do? He plays on the floor with his children. And I'm sitting up there straight up jealous. Like, what about me? Because he always put those kids first. And I want to tell you a cute story. Tanya loved shoes. Terry Jr. loved toys. So every payday, he would buy Tanya a pair of shoes and Terry Jr. a toy. And I believe she was, 3 years old. And I counted her shoes one day, and the child had 20 plus, pair of shoes, because he was like this: whatever my baby want, my baby get. And I got to tell you one more story. So I used to babysit in between working. And if a kid brought a toy and did not let Terry Jr. play with it, like a sword or something, Star Wars type stuff, even though he had worked the night before, he would call me in the room and say, "Why my baby crying?" And I'd tell him he would get up, go to the store, and buy Terry Jr. a bigger and better toy because his thing was it was all about his babies, all about his kids.
Yes.
And even with Michael, Malcolm, and Michelle, they spent a lot of time at my house in the summer and Christmas time, and he made sure that everything was, set for them to have a great time when they were in my home. He loved his kids.
So, ever since he's passed, sometimes I just write down my thoughts, my notes. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of something that I wrote back in May of 2022. The title is A Heartbeat of Hope. Dad had a love for the ocean, lakes, and rivers. Is it because he felt free? I realized a lot of the things he loved to do, I inherited. Is that what happens? His love of movies, the ocean, pictures. I have those love as well. Music? Well, I got the love of music from both of my parents. My mom waking us up on Saturday mornings, listening to music as she cleans. My dad, he loved gospel music, like my mom said earlier, and he also loved to listen to Michael Jackson as well.
Couldn't dance a lick though, but he would pat his foot.
Yes. A song that I listen to now that kind of reminds me of, I don't want to say grief, but it's a song by Mariah Carey called Bye Bye. This song reminds me of all the things you would miss or that I would miss out on since he's not here with me. And I think that's what hurts the most, the things that we miss with him not being there, Um, After my parents got divorced when I was 6, we primarily lived with my mom during the school year, but summers and Christmas, we would always go to San Antonio and spend it with my dad and my stepmom, Yvetta. And I'm telling you, this is before it was just me and Terry Jr. This is before he had Malcolm, Michael, Michelle, and Natasha. Every day during the summer, he would work nights. He would get off of work, maybe sleep a couple of hours, and then literally get up and take us to SeaWorld, take us to Astro World and Water World, take us to the big
The zoo.
the zoo,
We
and
had yearly passes for that.
the
Yeah.
flea markets in San
Yeah.
Antonio were huge. He would take us places like, river rafting down a river, which is crazy to me now that I look back on. But he just wanted to spend time with his kids and his family. Any spare moment he had, he was praising the Lord. He grew up in a,
Strong Seven Adventist
family,
background.
yes, but he loved the Lord. He loved his kids, and he loved work. He loved work. He worked up until the day he died. Um, he taught me that, both my parents have taught me that, you always work harder than the rest. My mom used to always say, give 110%, so that way, if you're slacking, you're still at 100%. Um, my dad got that from his parents, and so he loved taking us to drive-in movie theaters. I was his first favorite, and then Michelle came along, and she was his favorite because we're girls, and then Natasha came along, and he loved his boys as well, but he held his daughters very, very close to his heart. Um, yeah, so just wanted to talk a little bit about him, and he loved lighthouses. He loved every time he went to a different national park or a lighthouse to take a picture of it. He loved it. He loved being outside in nature. Okay, that's all I have to say right now, but just grief is hard. Grief of a parent is hard. And he met he met my mom when she was pregnant in Tacoma, right? They got married 3 months after I was born. So he was there the day I was born, and tell him that story, Mom.
Yeah, right. He really married me because he fell in love with Tanya. That's what I always say. And I know she didn't want to admit it, but he always said up until the day before he died that Tanya was always his favorite. So I told him, I said, you didn't really love me, you loved Tanya. But anyway, it wasn't just that he had love for his kid. He was a brilliant man. I mean,
Brilliant.
just
A genius.
a genius. And I have a junior genius, my son, Terry Jr. He's a spitting image of his dad, mentally, physically, emotionally. And so he's a great loss because, like I said, after, I went through wanting to kill him, how divorcees are. We became the best of friends. And when I say the best of friends, it was nothing that I wanted that he wouldn't make happen if I asked him for it. So no regrets. We were just young when we got married. And I can truly say that I'm proud that I was married to him and Tanya, natural father. I guess I have my tastes are brilliant men because both of them are very, very, very intelligent. So
do you want to talk about Grandpa Robert for a little bit?
Well, my dad, he died in 1992, I believe, and he was only 55. It was so devastating to me because I want to say 3 months before that, someone asked me, "Are your parents still living?" And I looked at them like they had lost their mind because my grandpa lived to be 97, Willie Acree of Camilla, Georgia. And I'm like, my daddy gonna live forever, And then this tragedy happened because he was a truck driver, and the reports say that they believe he was avoiding another car to keep from hitting them. He was going around the curve, and something happened. Those old school trucks did not have all the protection they have now. He had rods on the back, and the rods apparently started coming through the windshield. So my daddy jumped. Unfortunately, when he jumped, the truck was jackknifing and it fell on him and crushed him.
Wow.
I would not tell you that I wanted to die, but I didn't know what to do with myself. I really didn't. And it's no set time. It's no set grievous and lever that you go through. It's like I just can't describe my heart. I had lost my sister Priscilla, and I distinctly remember and still feel that I lost a space in my heart. That's where she belonged. But losing my dad was like nothing I could ever, ever, ever describe because, like Tanya, my daddy made me feel like a little girl. You get me on the phone. I remember he called me when I was in Hawaii, and when I hung up, my husband was just laughing at me, shaking his head, and I'm like, what? He's like, you just became a little girl on that phone with your dad. And that's how he made me feel. And I remember distinctly, fondly, that I had called Dad. He lived in Tampa, Florida. I said, Dad, we're going to drive from Baton Rouge to come visit you, me and Terry Jr. and Tanya. And he said to me, okay, baby, but if you break down 1 hour from Baton Rouge, Daddy will come get you.
Yes.
That's the kind. So my dad, oh, well, Daddy was a Rolling Stone. I ain't ashamed. He had about 15 of us, 8 for sure, but he claimed if you said it was his child, he said okay. And he loved his child too. He loved all of his children too. So all I've ever known was my daddy love for his children, and Tanya daddy love for her and his children, and Charles love for his children.
And grandkids.
And grandkids. And the point is, there's nothing better than dad. I could never, when we went through a divorce, I could never even entertain the thought of keeping my children away from their dad because mine's meant everything to me. And, it's like, I'm better now, but I still go through times where I think about him and I wish I could share things with my dad and hear his voice, his distinct voice.
The voice.
And lucky for me, I have a twin brother. I have twin brothers, Alonzo and Alfonso. I'm not a twin. I have 2 twin brothers. And Alfonso look and sound and act just like my dad. So I just love when I have interaction with him because I'm looking at him and I'm hearing daddy. And I'll always be a daddy girl.
So, Mom, how do you think people deal with grief? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, grief is different for everyone, and even the loss of a loved one is different for each one. Like, I was in pain when I lost my sister, but the level of pain was not the same as when I lost my dad. I had lost my grandfather, and other people. The first one I remember that was extremely close to me was my cousin Richard. We was raised as brother and sister. I thought I could never, ever, ever hurt as much as I hurt when he was taken away from us. But then, I lost my sister, and then when I lost him, it was a pain beyond compare. But I will not say to you, Latanya, that I know how you feel because no one knows how a person's feeling during that time because it's different for everyone. Everyone grieved differently. I remember, you remember me? Tell them what happened when my dad died.
Well, I was 10, 11 when Grandpa died, and Mom, that was the first time I've ever saw her in distraught. She would just break out crying for no reason. Not for no reason, but she would just break out crying just automatically on the spot.
And I stayed in the
Anytime,
bed too for a week.
anytime Boys to Men song came on,
It's hard to say
it's hard to
goodbye.
say goodbye, and it came on the radio station a lot because they were popular back then. We had to turn the station because that would make her cry. Um, being 10 years old, seeing your mom devastated, that was hard. And now I could kind of get a glimpse of what she was feeling when her dad passed. But she had two young kids to taken care of, so she might have been down for a week, but you better believe she was right back up. And and that's when I realized how strong my mom is because she just kept going. I knew even when you lose someone, you have to keep going, even though it's hard. For me, when my dad passed, I was in distraught for months. I cried almost every day for months. I would wake up at 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, going over his last hours. And even now, I have to tell myself, not right now, Latanya. I give myself permission to think about all the good times that we had, all of our stories and talks, and how special our talks were. Quick little story when I went to Fayetteville. I'm 39, so I'm doing my travel nursing for a year, and then I was going to come back home and figure out what I was going to do next in nursing here in Florida. And I got on what's the one of the dating sites. I think it was Facebook dating or something. And I went on a date, and I told him in advance that I was going on a date. So then when Friday night came out, and I was like, okay, I'll be back later. He was like, where are you going? I'm like, I've been telling you all week that I'm going on a date. And he was like, well, is the guy going to pick you up? And I'm like, no, I'm going to meet him. The guy lived about an hour away. So we met halfway at like a, what is the little, like a
Tavern or something.
yes. And we had dinner. This man called me twice during my date. The first time he called, just checking up on me. The second time, it might have been 10 o'clock, 10:30. We went to like a steak restaurant, and so after we sat there for a while, we went to his car and just sat in his car and started talking. And my dad called again, and when he called again, of course I'm going to answer. That was like the first inclination that I got that the guy was a little irritated that I was going to answer my dad call. But it's my dad. You're going to answer your parents' call no matter what you're doing, right? Anyway, I answer his call. He's like, what time are you coming home? I'm 39 years old, okay? It's like 10:30. I said, Dad.
Your daddy called me and he said, do you know your daughter went out with some, I can't say what he called him, and I haven't even met him?
He was very upset.
This ain't gonna work for me. I said, well, tell her. That's between you and her.
So I said, Dad, I'll be home when I'm home. And then I get off the phone with him. Of course, I get home. Guess what?
He's waiting.
My key wouldn't open the door. It wouldn't unlock the door for some reason. I couldn't get in, so I had to wake him up. Jackie came downstairs and let me in. The next morning, he comes sit on the side of my bed and gave me a lecture.
You didn't tell me that.
He said, "Latanya, we don't go out on dates with people that I don't get to meet." I said, "Well, I didn't think that you would want someone to come to your house and know where you lived." He was like, "No, he needs to come meet me." He was like, "This is what we do." So
And I was that way too when you was growing up as a teenager.
I know, but after that, I might have went on another day, and I said, "You know what, Dad? I'm going to just spend all my Friday nights with you. I'm going to stay here with you, and we're going to hang out." And that's what I did for the rest of the time that I was in Fayetteville doing my travel nursing.
Yeah, because when the guy did come and meet your daddy, he called me about that too, and he said,
I wasn't going to talk about that.
He said, "Oh, I gotta tell it." He said, "You would not believe how he was dressed, and he's old as dirt. I want to know what is his attention with for my little girl. What is his problem? He old as I am."
I was trying something different, dating someone that was a lot older than me.
He had a fit.
So anyway, needless to say, after that visit, he comes in, they talk about religion, which totally went left.
Yeah.
And then after a while, Dad was like, "You guys can go now." And it felt much like he was kicking us out. But when I got back from that second date, I knew it was done. If you feel intimidated by my dad, which he could be intimidated, but that's not, he just wanted to get to know the guy and kind of get a feel for him. And the guy was very much didn't want to talk to my dad, had an attitude about it, and I knew for sure that he was not going to be the one that I was going to keep seeing. So
yeah, Terry said that he act like he didn't have the right to question him about his own daughter. That's my daughter. That's what Terry said to me.
So with grief, I know that, like you said, everybody deals with grief differently. Some things that I think that help with grief is number one, having a supportive family. Have a family that you can talk to about your loved one. And, even though I cried, my mom was okay. She was like, "You can come talk to me anytime, any day or night." Even Charles said that to me, that I can talk to him anytime. But oddly enough, the person that I felt the most comforting in talking to besides the Lord was my brother. Just this past anniversary of his death date, which was in September, a couple of weeks before a couple of weeks before my 40th birthday. I was just sad, and I called my brother. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And I said, "I didn't really want to call you because I didn't want to make you sad today, but I'm feeling sad and I just wanted to talk." And he was like, "You can talk to me about that anytime." And he sat there and comforted me, made me laugh. That's what my brother is. He just a comforting person. He made me laugh and just talked to me until I felt better. So having a supportive family is number one. I think it's okay to cry because I cried a lot. Mom at some point thought that I need to see a therapist because she thought I was really, really down, and I for sure was down.
Well, you were. You were.
I was dealing with it. Some people don't grieve out loudly; they grieve to themselves. So
that's dangerous.
That could be unhealthy. So even just letting your loved ones that they keep it in, let them know that even though they don't want to talk about it today, that they can talk about it with you if they want. For me, talking about it helps. Writing it down helps. Sharing memories help. So just love each other. Mom has some. You want to share one of your quotes, or?
Well, my computer kind of died. I just want to say that when it comes to grieving, everyone grieves differently, and there are no words. There are no words. So if you want to say something to comfort someone, just tell them, "I'm here for you." If you want to talk, there are no words. There's nothing you could say that's going to make them feel better. It could make them feel worse. So it doesn't mean that they don't love you, but I know for a fact just the presence of different ones of my friends made me feel better. Just their presence, not their words. I know everyone is different. Um,
I actually had someone tell me after about a week that I needed to get over it.
yeah,
It wasn't a family, but it was a guy that I was talking to. He told me to get over it, and I'm like,
and that's because he probably haven't really lost anyone that he truly loved.
yeah,
Because love, when you go through that hard, deep down grieving, it's because you love them just as deep. It's love that you're having a residual from, and that residual turns into grief
yes,
because of the deepness. Um, if you didn't really love them, you could be sad for people when they're gone, and I guess you can get over it to a certain extent, but you never get over a deep loved one, whether it's a family member or a friend. You'll never get totally over them. There will be times you'll have memories like your godmother. So many things has happened in our lives, and I'll think Kayla should be here, and her name was Shakita Adams
yes,
Brown, but my kids renamed her Kayla,
because we couldn't say Shaquila.
and
She was the greatest godmother that anyone can have,
truly,
and we lost her when I was 17. I was a senior in high school, and surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, my senior year of high school, my mom got a job promotion from. We lived in Baton Rouge, and I went to Estrema High. Shout out to Estrema.
hey, for
In my
you.
senior year, we moved to Lawrence, Kansas in October. I hated it. I begged my mom to let me move back home. And then after Christmas, she let me move back home to finish high school. And so I stayed with my godparents, Kayla and Joel. And at this point, my godmother was very sick. She had scleroderma. And she was
She
the
had
most
Jaquel. Yeah.
and my god sister Jaquel at the time was 4 or 5, and just Shaquila she was a vibrant person. She was always on the go. She was always going to Jackson to see her mom and her brother, her family. She just was nonstop. And when she got sick, it was just a sad sight to see that she went from going 100% of the time to going zero. And I was there her last couple of months before she passed away. And that was the first time that I truly lost someone that I was really close with. And I was physically ill. That's when I knew that grief can actually make you physically ill, the love. So even though I'm a nurse and I deal with death, but when it's a personal death, or it's heartbreaking, it's devastating, it's distraught. And even when my grandma Des passed away and she was older, I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, couldn't breathe, and have an anxiety attack. And so when you love someone, your
And like,
body
yeah,
manifests
yeah.
grief physically as well as mentally, your thoughts.
And I just feel like a hole is in my heart. How could I ever be wholehearted? Because I've lost very dear people to my heart that they're not here and I can't talk to them. Like Daz, I remember being in Kuwait and something came up and I called my mother-in-law, even though me and Terry had been divorced for years, and she would comfort me. And my godmother, Addie, she just loved me just because.
Yeah.
When a person loves you for who you are and just because, that love is so deep. And sometimes I think about her and I could just see her face and I can hear her voice, what she would say to me if we were talking. And those are holes in my heart.
Yes.
But what keeps me going is all of their love tells me that they want me to be strong. That well, minus my cousin Richard and my dad, Des had a full life. My godmother Addie had a full life, but you never want them to go. You never ever want your loved one to go. It just leaves a heart aching,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and
Your heart aching, yeah.
just an ache,
Yeah.
But it's okay to ache, and then get up and keep going.
So today we just talked about, a grief of a loved one, but there's so many different types of grief, and we'll have another podcast on that as well. There's a grief of a loss of a best friend, which can equally be hard.
A divorce can be a grief.
Yes. A physical illness can be a grief, like a death to, you feel a death of your body, like your body doesn't work the way you want it to work. So we'll continue to talk about this, and sorry that today was a little bit hard,
And
heavy.
morbid, as my grandson would say, that's morbid.
I don't know. I think about getting older. My son, who's 19, a couple of years ago, we were in the car, and he was like, "Mom, Nana, how come every time you guys talk, the conversation goes morbid?" And we were like, "What are you talking about?" And so now we try to put that in the back of our head. And of course, as you get older, you're like, "Oh yeah, that person died," or "Oh yeah, that person is in a hospital," and then you go morbid. I'm like, "Oh yeah, sorry." So we try to have that in the back of our mind to not be too morbid around him. But we love you guys. Thank you for joining our podcast today. We want you guys to, send us your thoughts, your questions. Our email address is nadine.vera@myyahoo.com. We have a Facebook page called Enter the Minds of Nadine and Vera. Please join our Facebook page.
And guess what?
What?
If you want to be a part of our podcast, just let us know.
We would love to have you on with us.
You're invited.
Please. Yes, but please go to Spotify. You can find our podcast on Spotify. Enter the Minds of Nadine and Vera. That's the name of our podcast. You can follow us, rate us, leave us a comment. We love you guys, and thank you so much for joining us today.
And maybe we can get one of the younger people to join our podcast, because we want our demographic to be big. Since my grandson of 19 wants to know what's the demographics.
Oh, yes, he did.
Yeah, he is another brilliant child. I have been so blessed with the children.
Well, we love you. You guys have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.